You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud and to our Friday show, where we take a break from the news cycle and breathe out. Today is Friday, the 23rd of August, and I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Leah Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stephens.
And on the show today, getting dumped and getting over it. Do celebrities know more about heartbreak than civilians? JLo. JLo. One of our reporters found out, and we have our own advice for her. Fashion icon Jessie Stephens has a clothing recommendation. I want you all to watch a free TV show. And Mia has a book she loves that she thought she'd hate. And absent spouses, an unexpected slumber party and some vomit. No, it wasn't Mia Freedman's Logies night. It's our bests and worsts of the week. But first, Jessie Stephens.
In case you missed it, there is a word you can no longer call your colleague. Mia, are you listening?
Well, there's so many.
There are.
Apparently, I'm not allowed to use the C word, even though I do use it as a term of affection.
Get your pen out and write this down. An Aussie mayor named Tom Tate has now formally apologised for a word he used to describe a colleague. He thought it was a light-hearted comment, but it ended up prompting a full-blown investigation. So what did he call MP John Paul Langbrook? He called him a ranger.
Ooh.
In a press conference, Tate said, "You know, lose one ranger, get another ranger. What the hell? That's what the Gold Coast is all about. I don't understand."
He also hashtagged it diversity.
Yes.
Oh
there are
my
a few
God,
issues we
that
want.
is quite Gold Coasty.
Tom Tate did.
Okay.
But the Office of the Independent Assessor were not impressed. In its determination, they said, while the conduct may well be argued to be in jest or intended to be humorous, it was considered that the term ranger was still capable of being discriminatory and unreasonably causing offence to particular groups. The complaint was also said to raise various concerns about the use of the term, including its reference to orangutans.
The person who was called a ranger was not the one that complained.
No.
It's because the mayor put this on a lighthearted Facebook post with a picture of this guy as his mate, I think, and other people complained about it.
So what do you think, Mia? Do you think that you have the right to call an employee a ranger to their face?
I would never, because I think you've got to listen to the people who are the thing.
The rangers. You have to listen to the rangers.
Well,
you're
whatever
speaking-
it happens to
yes.
be, whether you say something is offensive or not, you kind of – and also they're not a monolith. There's lots of people with red hair who have different views. All the people that I've spoken to seem to think it's fine and take it as a compliment, but I think it's also how it's intended.
Speaking of, we asked a few people in our office who do have red hair. Maybe that's even offensive to spot them out and say, can you tell us what you think about this term? But we asked them if they thought the
little
term –
insensitive, maybe.
yeah, if the term ranger is offensive, and here's what they said.
Not remotely. I'm very comfortable with being a ranger. I'm very comfortable in my own skin about being a ranger. I refer to myself as a ranger. However, it depends who's saying it and in what context. So it's like I wouldn't go around the office and say, hello, Baldy, or hello, Big Nose, or whatever. So if I know someone and they refer to me as a ranger, that's absolutely fine. But it's just, common sense.
Well, on the one hand, I can see why, these kind of negative stereotypes like gingers being quick to anger. Don't really want these derogatory phrases flying around. But then on the other, I'm not a big fan of linguistic policing in general. So this news does, of course, instantly send me into a fiery rage.
I don't care. I could not care less if someone called me a ranger. It depends. Like, somebody could say you're a ranger, or like, oh, my friend who's a ranger, with warmth, and I'd be like, that's nice. But if someone used it as like, you're a ranger as an insult, I'd be like, get a better insult.
Honestly, I don't mind. If someone wants to call me a ranger, you can call me a ranger. It kind of depends on who the person is. If you're going to say it in a disrespectful way, like, it might not be appreciated. But also, like Tim Minchin says, like, only a ginger gets to call another ginger. So there's that too.
Holly, would you use the term ranger?
No, I wouldn't. But I grew up in a ranger house. Ranger is an Australian thing, right? We don't use it in England.
Oh,
It's not,
what do you
not
call redheads in England?
A ginger. In England, you call them the ginger.
And is it a term of endearment? Or?
It's very similar to ranger in that it can be fine, but it can also be a little bit, if people are calling you a ginger X, You know what I mean?
Yeah. It can be a
It can
slur.
be, yes. My dad had red hair. My brother had red hair. My hair used to be quite red, and my kids have red hair because there's also red hair on Brent's side. And my daughter gets called Ranga as her nickname at school.
Does she mind it?
I don't know that she loves it, but I think she has decided to accept it as a term of endearment, which I think is often what you do, don't you, when somebody starts calling you a name and you decide how you're going to handle it. But I think that's because, as we discussed last week, she's called Matilda and there are about 10 other Matildas in her year. So they all have a nickname. And so she is Ranga Matilda.
I wouldn't use it. I don't think I've ever used it to describe someone, or at school I think that it could be seen as a bit of a derogatory term to describe someone. I don't think it's on par with sort of racist or homophobic language. Obviously that's a different thing. I think it's funny that this has been
I think there should have been a trigger warning.
In the workplace, you just can't comment on what people look like. It's taken us a long time to get Mia up to speed with that.
Exactly.
I know I used to call you Blondie until just recently, Jessie, because I couldn't remember your name.
Okay, I want to talk about being dumped, and not only because of JLo, but also a little bit because of JLo. As we talked about on Wednesday, this has been the week that we were told officially what we all have known for some time, which is the greatest love story of our time, which was the rekindling, and of course, there's a whole movie called that, but the rekindling of the love affair between Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, which originally started 20 years ago, culminated in them getting married again 2 years ago, not once but twice, once in Las Vegas, once in Georgia. She loves love. Well, so does he, I think it's fair to say. I've seen that video of him on Raya when he is courting for love.
I think he loves sex.
Yes. And they got back together and everybody was like, this is amazing. This is brilliant. True love's triumph. All of those things.
Why did they break up, Hole?
Well, I know why you think they broke up. I put it all very squarely.
I've changed my mind.
I know Ben so well. It's definitely his fault.
I actually think it is. The easy read is that she wanted to be in the spotlight. She turned their relationship into content. She loved a red carpet. But none of that's new. I actually think that maybe it was him. He's well known to have suffered from addiction issues.
What makes you think, Holly, that JLo was dumped?
Well,
and that she didn't do the dumping?
No, you're right. I don't actually think that she was necessarily dumped. I think she was probably like, we can't do this anymore. But Ben Affleck, and again, this is such speculation, but it probably pokes at something in me and lots of women I know. He strikes me as the kind of guy who he loves it and he hates it. He loves it and he hates it. Do you know what I mean?
It's hot and cold, yeah.
He loves JLo's JLo-ness, but very often douchebag dudes, I'm just going to say it, the thing that attracts them to you is also the thing that repels them from you. And I reckon that he thought he could handle JLo, but he can't handle JLo. He's just not up to it.
Her sun shines too brightly.
He's not man enough.
It's burnt his
I'm
eyes.
feeling very protective of my friend JLo. I don't know what happened, but emotionally, I feel like I'm gravitating towards JLo. I do. But I was apprehensive. I think that when we tell our love story, the love story of our life, to the world
Do you mean the greatest love story never told that we've told a lot?
Yeah. So I think that when we make our documentary and when we also make our film and our album all about the love story that
it's bad
we decided
juju
to tell, I think it's bad juju. There seems to be, we've talked about this before, an inverse correlation between how much we declare our love from the rooftops and maybe what's going on behind the scenes. I see this all the time and I just think, we got to be careful because once we say, I've found the love of my life, look at me, I'm finally happy, my whole life has led me to this moment to Ben, the second you say that out loud, I just think you're tempting fate.
A source told People, and we all know that the sources who speak to People are really the celebrities, she tried really hard to make things work and is heartbroken. And I believe that. I think JLo is heartbroken. I've seen her on a yacht this summer quite a lot, this northern summer quite a lot. She was looking great in a swimsuit, drinking champagne on a yacht, but you could see the sadness in her eyes.
What's interesting about JLo is that, I mean, the divorce papers show that the separation occurred on April 26th, which was 4 months ago. She relaunched before she filed for divorce because it's been very interesting the way she's handled these few months. It's been summer in America. She's gone to the Hamptons and she's done a lot of pap walks. Now, JLo loves a pap walk. There's nothing wrong with a pap walk. Explain what a pap walk is.
I might take issue that she's done a lot of pap walks, but a pap walk is like a deliberate showing for the paparazzi where you either prearrange it or you go somewhere that you know they're going to be. So, if you're a famous person and you choose to go to the hot spot in the Hamptons for lunch where you know the photographers are going to be, then it's a very deliberate showing. But also, cameras follow JLo around, especially right now while everyone thinks they're breaking up. They're like, where's she? Where's he? Any day you open a celebrity website, it'll say, she's in LA, he's in New York, she's in Rome, he's in blah. Like there's been a JLo Ben watch going on now for months.
That's true. But celebrities of that level, like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, JLo, the paps only photograph you when you want them to.
They know how to avoid them.
And I'm not, again, this sounds like I'm saying it's her fault or any, I just think it's a really interesting strategy and a very JLo strategy, which I'm here for. She's trying to take control of the narrative. That's why I don't think it was her choice to end. I think it was his fault, as much as breakups can be one person's fault. Sometimes they are. I think he crossed a line, whether it was cheating, whether it was addiction. I feel like maybe it was actually cheating because I think with addiction, maybe she hung in already. I mean, we're literally gossiping. We're literally making stuff up.
You don't think, though, because this is going to be the dominant narrative that everyone peddles and that we've heard from the beginning, is that poor Ben doesn't like the spotlight because he is
such a misogynistic narrative that I was part of and I have regrets.
He knew exactly what he was getting.
Yeah.
He dated her 17 years ago and that was the narrative that he spun over why they broke up that time.
But, and this is what that narrative will say, even JLo was like, we're going to do it differently this time. We learnt a lot of lessons. It was the media that split us. That's what they both said about last time. And then Ben was on a podcast recently, like in the last month, 6 weeks, where he said, you can photograph me, you can photograph JLo, but when you photograph my kids, you're crossing the line. He basically said that was really upsetting him at the moment. So there will be a story. And what we're essentially calling JLo in that narrative is an attention seeker.
Except that his kids, and you're right, that was one of the narratives, except that his kids were very publicly with JLo in the Hamptons since the breakup. And they also don't need to be photographed if they don't want to. So it's been really interesting watching everybody give their message by what photos they're in, where they are, who they're with.
I'm not a poor Ben guy. I think he's a very talented, very tortured, probable pain in the ass to live with. Like Jennifer Garner, like there is no one more delightful on the planet.
What about that quote that she gave about him? And she's been very discreet since their divorce, but she said, to paraphrase, when Ben shines his light on you, it's warm and beautiful, but it's very cold in the shade.
Yeah.
And also the other thing about the narrative about the fame is it suggests he has no agency. Like we keep talking about that documentary. He was a co-producer on that documentary about their relationship. He chose to be in it. He didn't have to do any of that, as if we really think he was surprised to walk into his house and see them going through these love letters. Like I don't buy it. Anyway.
I have one more question to ask just on JLo and Ben. Because everything we know about relationships is through the prism of Bennifer. I think we can agree.
That's true.
And the age-old question is, does anyone ever really change? Because that was what everyone thought, is that they were each other's the love of their life. I heard that from their own mouth. The media broke them up the first time. The second time, this was meant to mean what we all learned from that was people can change. Maybe your ex is the love of your life.
I think they have amazing sex. And I think that can plaster over a lot, and it can also make you think that you feel a way that you don't, or that you can overcome things that you perhaps couldn't before. The sex can be confusing.
But you don't have to get married twice in Las Vegas and Georgia for the sex. Like I don't buy that.
No, but I think it makes them think and feel a whole lot of things. But then eventually you're not having sex 3 times a day and you've probably had some UTIs and you know, you can see things more clearly.
Let's get away from the UTIs and back to celebrity breakup wisdom. So a little story for Outlouders. One of the very talented people who works here at Mamamia, she's called Liv James. She is a social producer and she was at the Logies on Sunday night. As you may have heard Mia was, she's barely talked about it. I don't know if you would know, but
no one knows that I was there.
Liv James was on the red carpet. And unfortunately for Liv, something had happened to her that morning that was not what she was expecting. Here's Liv telling us what happened to her the morning of the Logies.
Okay, so basically I was in this situationship with a guy that I'd been seeing for a little while, and it was, everything was going smoothly, but then it came to this abrupt ending that was quite brutal on the morning of the Logies, and I still had to rock up to work, and I thought to myself, what can I ask these celebrities that can help me and other people? And I was like, I'm just going to ask them about my heartbreak. And then the head of entertainment was like, you should just tell them the story. So I was like, okay. And then all these celebrities started looking at me really like with the saddest eyes I've ever seen, honestly. But I got some good advice, and 10 out of 10 worth it.
So Liv decided to ask because she's a professional. I need to put on the record, speaking of Ben Affleck, douchebag move to dump your girlfriend on the morning of a very big professional thing.
So true. She had the Logies that night. Could you not wait until the next day?
You could have. That's a bit of a narcissistic thing to do. Anyway, Liv.
That person has been dragged by every celebrity.
Possibly I shouldn't.
And the gold Logie for douchebag goes to
this poor person. Anyway, so Liv asked the famous people their advice to get over heartbreak. I hope JLo's listening to this. Here's some of what the famous people said.
You're the same age as my daughter, and I feel sorry for her. Come here.
No one should be in a serious relationship before the age of 35.
Do not look at another person until you're 35. Okay. Minimum. Take the good from what you learn from it, and if you grow from it, that's awesome. Don't take your baggage into the next one.
Even if Beck does run off with this guy that she's flirting with up there tonight, I'll be short-term sad. And it's nice to be short-term sad because it meant something to you. If you're not sad, it means the relationship meant nothing, which is actually a terrible thing.
Do you know what? It always feels like shit now, but it just gets better.
I've got a quote from Winston Churchill. If you ever find yourself going through hell, just keep going.
He ain't worthy of you. You do your thing, you treat yourself fine, and you get on with life.
That's something you don't want to hear. Time. It's the only thing, in my experience, that really heals.
So James Stewart is the last voice you heard there, who was walking in a very Bennifer moment. He was walking the red carpet for the first time with Ada Nicodemo on his arm, who's an out louder. Hi, Ada. She was very excited to see Liv, and they gave some good advice. What he said after that, though, was something about getting drunk, which I think is also fine. Do celebrities know a lot about breakup wisdom? What's the best there, and what would yours be, Mia Freedman?
The advice that I gave Liv at the Logies where I was
as a famous person, as a celebrity, some might say.
It's the only interview I did. No one else cared. And it's only because I'm Liv's boss and she had to ask me questions. But the advice I gave was get a fringe.
I'm glad you didn't say, which you should have done, looked at her really seriously and gone, did you need to bring your personal life to work today?
That's so true. Boundaries, Liv, boundaries. I, said get a fringe and get a haircut. That's terrible. And also buy clothes for your feelings, because I think when you look in the mirror, you want to see someone different to the person who was in that relationship and who got dumped. And I think that is always a good thing.
I need to prosecute the hair comment, because I reckon if you go to the hairdresser.
Maybe don't get a fringe.
And you say, give me a fringe and give me a pixie cut. I think the hairdresser is legally obliged to say, have you been dumped in the last 24 to 48 hours? And if you say yes, then they have to say no.
I think you just need to say, very good point, Jessie, you need to say, I need a breakup haircut. And a good hairdresser understands what that means. It understands explicitly not give me a pixie cut or a fringe. I was joking about the fringe kind of, but it means that you need to glow up.
Buy some clothes for your feelings is the most Mia Freedman sentence I've ever heard, and I really like it. I get that.
Some people eat their feelings. I buy clothes for my feelings.
My advice to Liv, not that she asked me, I'm not famous enough, but would be to wallow. My thing is, you get a wallowing window, and I think that how long that is dependent on how long the relationship was. So if it's a 4-week situationship, you get like an advent calendar-sized window, like a teeny window.
Like 4 hours? What do you think? Like
a week, maybe? Because wallowing,
I think 4 weeks, that's 25% of the...
I disagree with you on this. Continue, and then I will...
like your ratio.
I think
if you're married for 5 years.
Like when I say wallowing, I'm talking about, not getting out of your pajamas, maybe drinking too much, maybe ordering lots of food in, eating chocolate, and crucially, talking your friends' ears off. They give you this window, I think, of a certain amount of time that they have to tolerate that. It's part of the contract of your relationship. And then at one point they have to cut it off. And I reckon if you've been married for 10 years, you get like a huge picture window-sized space, like months, possibly years, really, of wallowing time.
Oh, it gets to a point where you're like, okay, it's
Then
time to move on now.
You have to just take that pain and shove it really, really far down, really suppress it, turn it into a hard little pebble. Then you can just throw it
like a kidney stone that you have to wee out of your wee hole.
Teach you that at school in Manchester.
And they
kindergarten.
They really hurt a lot when you pass the kidney
but
stone.
then they're gone and you feel so great.
And you can keep them in a jar in your room with like experiences I lived through on the jar.
Heartbreak is not like a kidney stone, not even a little bit.
Come on. You wrote a whole book about it.
I'm the expert.
You are?
I'm the actual expert.
I forgot
Far
that.
out, I love that book.
I am.
But they were quite serious breakups.
Well, Holly, if you'll recall,
I'm sure I do.
At the end of that book, I wrote about a heartbreak that I experienced. And guess what?
Oh, you did?
It was a situationship. It was one of the worst heartbreaks I ever had was with someone I wasn't with for very long.
Why is that, do you think?
My theory is that you only have hope. You only have how you imagined it to be, and you're at that early stage of infatuation where you've started playing out all of the amazing things that are going to happen. And then when you sit there to be like, I'm now going to write the list of all the things I hate, you've got none because you never knew them well enough.
You're letting go of a dream of a relationship rather than a relationship itself.
Whereas like I love Luca. If we broke up tomorrow, I could write a long list of things that I like.
Really long list.
Yeah. So there's more like fodder for my breakup
such a good point.
So as the person who wrote the book on heartbreak, Jessie Stephens, what's your advice for Liv?
My advice is that you need to have some sort of ritual, because my problem with heartbreak is that it is a type of grief that we don't have any ritual for.
It's invisible.
So, yes, and when there's grief in the case of a funeral, that's a very specific experience that people rally around you.
You wear a specific outfit.
Yeah, and you go to a thing.
Clothes for your feelings.
And I wasn't thinking of the outfit. I was more thinking of the church or the ceremony. But yeah, you also wear an outfit. But with a breakup, it's the grief compounded with the rejection. It's that they don't want you anymore and they're going to live their life over here. They just don't want you to be a part of it, which is a different type of pain. So I think you need some sort of ritual, and that's where the hair thing comes in, right?
Yeah.
Yes, go and get the haircut. Yes, maybe go get your clothes. Write your list of everything you hate about them. Write journals, write whatever. And also, I always think, and I'm back to JLo a little bit, right? Because JLo's sitting there right now weeping, going, Ben and I had some really good times. And, you know,
I think she's angry and defiant now.
Yes.
I think she's past the weeping.
True. Okay, 2 months ago,
Met
she was
Gala?
like...
not a lot of weeping.
Yes, Met Gala night. She went home and she just went, remember our wedding in Vegas?
Yeah.
What a lovely night. And it was because I was with Ben and I'm not going to have those fun times anymore because Ben is no longer with me.
My heart's broken again.
Ben actually posted to social media that night he was getting changed into his tux in a toilet. He doesn't normally do that. She would have been like, he posted social media for me.
Exactly.
And then look what happened.
The humiliation, though. There's humiliation in every breakup, really, or a sense of failure or rejection if you're the one who's been dumped. Jessie, do you think that idea of writing a list is actually a good thing of all the reasons you remember Dolly Alderton's good material about a breakup, and the ongoing thing in that book is writing a list of all the reasons that it's good that you've been broken up with?
Yes. Well, and all the things that weren't right. Because if it's breaking up, if you really think about it, there are absolutely reasons it wasn't right. But when you look back on those positive memories, you've got to remember that you were there too, that you were part of those memories and you're still here. So you can still have fun, and whether it's with another person. Like last time JLo was in Paris, she had dinner under the Eiffel Tower with Ben. I don't want you to ask me how I know that, but I do. And I know that Ben cried, and he was a bit of a wet blanket on that trip. JLo needs to reclaim Paris. She needs to go back to Paris. She needs to have a cocktail under the Eiffel Tower with her girlfriends, Jane Fonda. Perhaps with Noah Trevor.
With her clever counsel.
With Trevor Noah.
A celestial council.
Exactly. Bring them with your friends. Like
Post Malone can come.
Post Malone can
It's all come true. What do you think, you two, about the advice that the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else?
I don't think it's the most terrible advice in the world.
Look,
I mean, assuming you like missionary.
It's an effective strategy, but it's a risky one. Because sometimes you just transfer.
You imprint.
Or the other thing that happens is that next day when that person's left, you're like, oh, I'm still here in this pain. And that was fun for a minute, but now.
Yeah. So 2 things. I reckon you got to be careful.
It's also bad if you cry during the sex.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it's really bad sex because it's the first time you've had the sex. So you probably don't have the strength to be rejected again. That's what I found. So I would be like,
Risky.
I'm going on the apps. I need attention. And then the attention feels good. And then if that attention goes, you're like, oh, no, I did not sign up to be rejected again. I can't handle that. And the other thing is, don't then, and I've done this because I'm desperate for attention and validation because I have no self-esteem left, is I string someone along and treat them like shit.
Yeah.
So JLo, don't go find someone who you're going to kind of project all your traumas onto. Does she need a Pete Davidson moment?
I
think it would be great if she had a Pete Davidson moment.
No, because she would get engaged to Pete Davidson and probably marry him.
That's okay.
Because she can't be stopped. She gets engaged to everybody. Remember when she was engaged to the backup dancer?
She can't be stopped.
That was actually, she married a backup dancer. And then she got engaged, I think, to the other backup dancer. And that was bad.
She likes jewelry.
She loves love. And there's no rule about how many times you can or can't get engaged. Go for it.
What I really like about Liv's story is how seriously all those celebrities took it. Like Andy Lee with his thing and James Stewart about his thing about time. Like they really were there for Liv.
You know what also helps when you're in the depths of heartbreak is remembering that even the celebrities, the glitzy, the glamorous, the rich, among us get dumped.
They do.
And sometimes I like to think about, I'm sure Miranda Kerr's been dumped. In which case, happens to the most beautiful among us, and therefore we can all get over it.
Outlouders, have you got any excellent heartbreak advice? What actually helps you get over getting dumped? We will send all your advice to JLo because I'm sure any minute now we're going to get an On the JLo newsletter from her and we can just send it in our reply.
Mamamia Out Loud!
It's Friday, so we want to help set up your weekend with our very best recommendations. Mia, you have a book.
Yeah, I started reading a book. So, friend of the pod, Amelia Lester, texted me a picture of a book cover and said, best book I've read in ages. And I just need people to tell me what to read. So I immediately downloaded it onto my Kindle. And as soon as I saw the cover, I thought, I'm going to hate this. It looks really cheesy, which is something that you two would know about because it had a particular type of cover that felt very sort of 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It had like an illustration of a girl lying on a bed. And the book was called Margot's Got Money Trouble. And it just read like a sort of a daggy, rom-com, cheesy thing that I wouldn't usually like because I'm so smart. I'm not as smart as you two. I don't read anything literary. But I also just needed something a little grittier. Anyway, it turns out it is so good and so interesting. It is about a young woman who gets pregnant unexpectedly. I think she's like 18 or 19 and it happens right at the beginning, so that's not a spoiler. And her dad is a retired wrestler and her mum is a retired Hooters waitress. She's got no money and so what she has to do is start an OnlyFans to support herself and her baby. And it's interesting. It plays with first person, second person, third person. So it's just written in a really clever, interesting way. And it's just a good, easy page turner. I'm really liking it.
Sounds great.
Holly, what's your recommendation?
So I'm going back to back on Lee Sales' recommendations. Last week I recommended her Australian Story with Nick Cave. So apologies, Lee Sales. I'm sure you're listening to the show. Why am I so obsessed with you? Anyway, this show is called The Assembly and it's on ABC and it launched this week. It's on iView.
Fading up. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
For the first time in Australia, autistic students are undertaking an autism-friendly introduction to a journalism course.
They will be mentored by one of Australia's best journalists.
This is a chance to work with people who haven't really had a voice in media.
The students will interview some of Australia's most famous people.
Hello. Hello. Our rules are no subjects are out of bounds, no questions are off the table, and anything can happen.
Welcome to the Assembly.
It's really interesting. It's like a documentary series. It's set at Macquarie Uni and it's a group of students who have autism and they are getting journalistic tutoring from the one, the only Lee Sales, right? And every episode they interview a famous person. And Lee helps them workshop their questions, how they're going to ask them. And then the famous person comes into the ABC and this group of wannabe journalists interviews them, right?
Oh, that sounds like
That's such a good idea.
And the thing that's really interesting about it is the group of students with autism are very diverse, as the spectrum would suggest. Lots of different kinds of presentations, dealing with things in different ways. But one of the things that they all do have in common with these questions is that they're just asking whatever the fuck they want. So in this first one, they interview Sam Neill, very famous actor. Some of them don't know who he is, and they're happy to say so. But also, there's a guy there who really does know who he is because of Jurassic Park. So he brings all his dinosaurs to show Sam Neill, and Sam Neill has to be like, oh. And then they ask him questions, and it's just so interesting because a bit like that, you can't ask that. There are some moments in it that make you really uncomfortable. And then it follows some of they're all young adults. So they're all like sort of 20-ish. It follows some of them home and you get some backstory and all of that kind of thing. And I assume that over the series, you're going to get to know more of them.
And is Lee in every
Lee's
episode?
in it all. And she's in the room and she's so warm and funny and smart. One of the students says to Sam Neill, "You're single and we know you like Australian journalists," because he'd recently dated Laura Tingle, right? "There's a single Australian journalist here today. Why don't you and Lee Sales get together?"
Oh, that is so good.
It's so good. And then there's another journalist who asks this question that makes him cry about his parents. And Sam Neill he's been going through cancer treatment. He's really living with quite serious cancer and he's very honest about that. They ask him about chemotherapy. It's so interesting. And, just without it being like a worthy thing that you kind of get beaten over the head with, it's just so interesting and engaging to see these people who you might have preconceived ideas about how these young people with autism might act. And it's just not like that. It's just really interesting. Anyway, I love it. It's called The Assembly. Some of the guests they've got coming up, Albo, the Prime Minister, is going to do it. Adam Goods, Amanda Keller, Hamish Blake is next.
Oh.
So really good, feel-good TV. It's on the ABC and iView. It's called The Assembly.
My recommendation, there's not a lot of fashion/style things that I would have the guts to recommend, but if you were going to ask my recommendation about one item of clothing, what would it be?
Winged eyeliner.
Workout gear.
Workout gear.
Leggings, sorry.
Yes.
I got panicked and I answered the
You
wrong
live
question.
in activewear.
Yeah, that's my uniform, right?
No, I would never ask you that because you have camel toe.
Okay. All right, that's a personal issue that isn't relevant
Having
to
a vagina. That's a personal issue.
So,
Called a vulva, honey.
Sorry.
Anyway, I have tried every pair of leggings, the expensive ones, the cheap ones, the everything. And I recently went into Uniqlo. I had someone recommend to me these specific leggings, and they are called Airism Ultra Stretch Leggings. They're $50, and I got them in lilac. They are.
And that's your first mistake.
Yeah, I don't know about my colour.
Why did you get them in lilac?
I think,
weirdo.
I don't know. I think they look good. I think they look
Leah,
good,
what's
actually.
wrong with lilac? Why are you telling us?
First of all, sweat. Second of all, period. Third of all, pelvic floor leakage. And fourth of all, you can see more your camel toe.
No, I don't have any. Actually, I bought myself some seamless underpants from Bonds, which were also good, that I think are quite good for the camel toe.
This is a camel toe recommendation segment. Anyway, let's move past that. Lilac, go on.
Yes. I was just thinking they should have like padding. You know how there's like when you do cricket, there's like a cup.
Like a box.
Yeah, you should have a cup for your camel toe. Anyway, lady startup idea. The thing about a good pair of tights, I want them high. I can't have them around my hips, my widest point. I'm just going to feel uncomfortable all day. And they have to be super stretchy and really, really soft. These are, how people say buttery soft. I never knew what that meant. These are the most comfortable tights I've ever put on. They are, or do you ever wear tights, right? And you're walking around or you're exercising and then the bottom starts to sag? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like the thing, they start to make their way down. You've got to pull them up all day. I don't have time for that.
No.
Also has 2 pockets. Great.
Pockets?
It has 2 pockets. It's really, really good. Anyway, best ones I've ever had, super elasticy. They are from Uniqlo, $50. I have
Uniqlo.
Yeah, I could wear them to bed, I reckon. They're that comfortable.
Every Tuesday and Thursday, we drop new segments of Mamamia Out Loud just for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get your daily dose of Out Loud, and a big thank you to everyone who is already subscribed. It's time time for best and worst of the week, where we talk about our high moments and low moments. Mine hasn't happened yet because I haven't seen Jessie in her leggings with her camel toe.
I'll take a photo.
But my other worst of the week that actually has happened is that I have had the 100-day cold. You can hear it in my voice. I'm probably going into, I don't know, feels like day a million. The person who told me about this was Kate Langbrook, who I saw at the Logies, where I was.
Is this a real thing or is this a Kate theory?
And also, why have you been, is it your fault that you've been sick for so long?
I don't know. I don't know why my immune system's just, it's like I've just had one thing after another. I had got influenza A, then I got a chest infection, and then last week I had just an average sort of a cold. Because I've got asthma, it often goes to my chest. I just think I haven't had a chance to properly recover probably, and I've just kept going and kept going. And Kate said she's the same. I spoke to someone else who said they've got the 100-day cough. It's just been a really rough winter for people. Lots of people at Mamamia away. It's not great. I mean, there's people going through much worse things, but there's no judgment around best and worst. And I've just felt like, I've just felt so annoyed.
Also, when it goes on for a really long time, something like that, like at the beginning, you're like, okay, I'm going to go to bed and have some soup and I'm going to take a day off work and whatever.
Yeah.
But then you just have to, don't you? You're just walking around with it and it's,
Sucks. My best was I went to the set of Strife. The second season started shooting a couple of weeks ago. I haven't been to set yet because of aforementioned 100-day cold. And one thing that you know is that you really don't want to spread germs on set. So last year when we had the first time all the cast got together and did their read-through, I wasn't feeling very well that day, and it was the first time I met a lot of cast. I was like lots of hugs and everything. I felt increasingly bad as the read-through happened, and I got home and that night I tested positive for COVID.
But you were wearing a mask?
Oh, I was wearing a mask.
You did all the right things.
I was wearing a mask, yeah. So I didn't give it to anyone that I know of. But back when we were shooting season 1, it was still COVID protocols. So you had to test every day before you came to set. You had to wear masks unless you were a performer or unless you were eating lunch. It reminded me what a different vibe it is to not have to. And it just felt so joyous being on set. I saw a lot of the cast at the Logies, but it was just lovely, like being on set. And again, I've got nothing to do on set as an executive producer, but we're filming the office scenes this week and there's a few new cast members. It's glorious.
Outlouders will want to know if all their favourites are back.
Yes, all their favourites are back, plus some extras. I met an actress who I've been a fan of for a really long time yesterday on set, who I can't mention, and she was wearing this outfit in character and I was wearing an almost identical outfit just in my regular life without realising it.
That's very Mia. I love it.
My worst is that Luca is away for the week. He's overseas and I am doing the solo mum thing, and oh my God, she still wakes up overnight, which is fine if you're kind of handing over to each other.
Because you two have always tag teamed really well.
Yeah, so normally we tag team, but now when you've got a baby waking up overnight and then sometimes she's up really early, you just have a bunch of, I can always find that like I can do a night or two of bad sleep, but you know, when you have a lot of nights and you can't catch up, that's when you start to feel very run down. But
you've had almost 18 months worth of nights.
Yeah. Look, and normally I can catch up because Luca's around. But on the first night, Luca left and I just went, we're going to go to Claire's, and we went to my sister's place and we had dinner and the girls had baths together and it was great. And I came home and went, honestly, I am nailing this.
Who needs a partner?
I don't even need Luca. You know what? This is easier without him. Like, just really applauding myself. And then I put her to bed and I was like, boom, 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 just nailing it. And then after about an hour, she started crying, which was weird. And I went upstairs and whatever I had fed her at Claire's had all come out. And she had done the world's biggest vomit in a cot, on the floor, everywhere. And so then we're in the shower and then we're in the bath, washed her hair 3 times, still smell like vomit. Take the sheet off the cot, throw it in the hallway, all the things. And you've only got 2 hands. And then she's like, Mum, I'm hungry. I just vomited everything. I'm like, when am I going to get your bottle? Anyway. And
you're going to remake the bed.
Got to remake the bed, put the cot down. And I'm like, mate, I'm tired, actually. Anyway, I put her back down and then I go, hang on, where did the cot sheet go? Because I put it in the hallway and now it's not there. And I hear from my bedroom the dog who had stolen the cot sheet and was eating the vomit. And it was just so disgusting. And I was like,
and you had to clean it up because Luca's not there.
Clean it up, and it was horrible.
My dog's eaten worse.
Yeah.
2 words, toilet training. Go on.
Oh. My best, though, is that over the weekend, Matilda and Luna did have their first sleepover, so slumber party. Claire came over, had a few friends over that night, and then Matilda was having a rough time and I went, why don't you just stay? And so we had a sleepover. The girls were in their pajamas.
Oh, my God.
They stayed, which was lovely, and then we all had breakfast
Where
together.
did you all sleep? How
So
did that
Claire
work?
slept with me, and then we've got a travel cot. So Matilda was just in that, and then Luna was in her bed. She didn't know Matilda was staying. So when she woke up in the morning, though, and saw Claire was there, she was like, oh, my God, this is great. And then the girls had breakfast together. It was just...
Does she like Matilda anymore? Is she growing on her?
Getting there. She doesn't, like, actively cry now when she sees Matilda, which is good. It's like exposure therapy. But Matilda loves Luna, and Luna's just feeling like Matilda steals her attention a bit. It's always fun when there's other people around. So,
parenting is easier when there's other people around.
The village, etc.
Holly, what's your worst?
I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for my worst because I'm just going to be honest about a conversation I had with some friends this week when I found out that everybody I know is on diet drugs except for me. It's not fair.
Like injectables?
Yeah. I thought the only famous people were doing that shit.
Oh, no.
And there's me being an ordinary person thinking, oh, I know talking about weight and bodies is very fraught. We generally don't talk about it much, but I've also said a couple of times, had a fight with Jessie about this on this show. There are a lot of women out there, particularly midlife women, who are not feeling great about their bodies, who are trying to eat right, exercise hard, blah, blah, blah. And I'm in that phase at the moment of just being like, I'm an ordinary person who my weight goes up and down and all that. And at the moment I'm being really trying to pull back to some kind of like very healthy whatever. Fucking eating cottage cheese all the time.
Can I just ask about cottage cheese? Because you're meant to feed toddlers that. Is that like the best version of cheese or something?
It's very protein rich and low fat, right? So if you eat, and again, I don't want to sound like one of those magazines from the 80s.
No, I have questions about cottage cheese.
High protein breakfasts are a good thing to eat, right?
Great.
So cottage cheese. Anyway, I'm not criticizing. Anyway, I don't want to sound like one of those people. But anyway, here I am being one of those people. And then I talk to some of my friends and they're like, oh, everybody's taking everybody's doing that now. And it made me sad.
I told you a bunch of people that we know that are on it. The thing about menopause, though, is that your body just wants to turn into a circle. Like it's just desperate to turn into a circle. It doesn't matter what you do or what you don't do. Your body's like, nah, we're going to be a circle now.
And I know it doesn't matter, right? I know it doesn't. But also you're kind of, when you don't feel like yourself, when you feel all those, like, you know, you're just trying to feel better. And then I'm like, oh, I see what everybody else is doing. Food is I like food a lot, right? I like healthy food. But rituals around food, thinking about it, cooking it, eating it with my family, going out for dinner, all those things are things that bring me a lot of joy. And as I understand it, a lot of those medications, like they just remove food from your world. I remember when you interviewed Johan Hari about it. And one of the things that really sticks in my mind, and he was talking about how he had very unhealthy relationship with food and he would, you know, eat buckets and buckets of fried chicken and things to make him feel better. And so for him, it was this amazing freedom, but then it also left this gap. And I think about a lot, but do I actually want to remove the joy that comes with that from my life? Like, I don't think I do. Anyway, sorry, everybody who I offended with that worst.
Why would you have offended anyone?
Because it's very sensitive talking about bodies and diets and things.
But I think it's also a thing that a lot of people are grappling with, and that choice and going on it. And I know people who have gone on it and it's made them feel really sick. And I think it's something a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, my best is related to Jessie's worst, and it's that Brent's been away. And
have any children vomited?
He would be really upset to hear this, but hopefully he won't listen. No children have vomited, and my children obviously are bigger. They can take care of themselves a lot more. It is still a lot more work for me when he's not around. Like, there's a lot of driving people around. There's a lot of cooking. There's a lot of all that stuff. But sometimes on the weekend, I really like to just be quiet and be at home and just be pottering about and just do the things I want to do. And that's what I did this weekend. Me and Billy had a really good Mum and Billy day on Saturday where we went and ate dumplings, which is our favourite thing. And I made him build some veggie beds with me, which he hated, but I bribed him with things for it. And I called that together time, even though he was winching all the way through it. And I built a new cage for my veggie bed that the rats keep invading. And I was like, every time I went in the kitchen and I put something down, it was there when I went back in for it. It was great. So I was like,
yeah, I know what you mean.
Brent came back and I was like, yeah, I love you, but it's been nice.
Oh, is Brent back already?
He got back this week, Wednesday.
Can you send him to my house?
Yes. Actually, he'd be really useful. He loves a baby.
I think he would.
Anyway, so yes, those are my best and worst of the week.
Before we go, We had a very interesting discussion on yesterday's subscriber episode about whether it is ever appropriate to buy a sex toy for a friend as a gift. And spoiler, one of us wrote this dilemma and one of us was horrified. So if you want to listen to that episode, there is a link to it in our show notes.
I can't wait to hear what the Outlouders think about whether or not you should do that. This is one we definitely need you all to weigh in on, friends. That's all we've got time for today and this week. A massive thank you to all of you Outlouders for listening to us. We'll be back in your ears next week. Also, it's Friday and we need to thank our amazing team, our excellent producer, Emeline Gazilas, of course, and Leah Porges for her audio production. And we'll see you all on Monday.
Bye.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and want to support us as well, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There is a link in the episode description.